Hails Neo Barbarians, Alex from Inner War Strength here with another video. Today I want to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that is the Dork Age. Okay, so what is the Dork Age? Some people call it modernity, the modern age, whatever it is. I personally like to call it the Dork Age because simply, this is the time of dorks. Okay, and I'm gonna get into that in a few more in a little bit. But today, I want to outline 5 characteristics of the Dork Age, and maybe some ways to navigate through the Dork Age. So join me. Let's have a cup of coffee and let's talk. So number one, the death of transcendence and the sacred. So in olden times, people used to have tradition, religion, and all these kind of inherited institutions which were passed down through generations and generations, and all of these things were sacred. Okay, all of these things were people believe were people that were things that everyone believed in, and they had great value in their communities and in the civilizations. Okay, and there were other things as well, like the spirit. So, like all of these things communicated a spirit, right? Spirit of heroism, for instance. Faith in a higher power, faith in something greater than yourself. A sense of wonder with the world, and a will to ascend beyond just mere material living. Okay, and all of high art and culture were a means to grasp the sublime, as it were. Okay, they were a means to kind of um, communicate with something higher. Okay, now I think it's pretty clear that a lot of these things have been slowly kind of replaced by pretty much memes and TikTok trends, you know that kind of stuff. So uh, a sense of shared meaning which has spanned generations and generations and generations over time has kind of slowly been eroded and replaced by just this kind of gray slop, this meaningless slurry of fake pseudo culture that doesn't have any grounding anywhere, um, nor does it have any meaning or higher essence. It's just kind of like a gray entertainment slop. Okay, so things like Marvel movies and whatever. I mean, just these kind of generic Hollywood bullshit, um, with these clever one-liners and all of these things. That's our culture now. You know, um, Everything that existed before is kind of almost anachronistic nowadays. You know, so, the death of the transcendence and the sacred. So no one believes in anything higher anymore. When Nietzsche said God is dead, this is what he meant. He meant that all that is sacred, that came before, has essentially been relegated to the dustbin of history, and that now there's no there is no God, there is no transcendent, there is no higher purpose, right? So what are we left with? We're left with you know just materialism, essentially. Okay, um, the destruction of organic community because of just people being able to move more now as well. Technology, all this other stuff. What I'm going to get into in a little bit more detail. Um, we've kind of had organic communities and traditions and all of these things kind of destroyed and replaced with fake superficial culture that values and obsessed with appearance more than anything, really. Okay, so how do we navigate through that? What do we do with that? Well, my advice is to find a higher purpose, find a noble struggle, find something that will give you purpose in a nihilistic world. Okay, develop your spirituality, right? Find some kind of spirituality that resonates with you, right? I'm sure there's something out there. For neo-barbarians, a noble struggle could be strength in and of itself, right? I think strength is something worth pursuing, just for its own sake, rather than for any purpose, beyond that. And in fact, you could argue that it can take some kind of spiritual manifestation in and of itself. Another thing you can do is foster community, with your friends and your family. Do heroic things. Hike up a mountain, go on an adventure. Do tough things together, lift weights together, train together, go out in a park and spar. Um, Celebrate your culture, celebrate what makes it unique, right? Celebrate your history and what makes that unique, while also recognizing the beauty in other cultures as well. There's plenty of things we can learn as well from there. And recognize the historical ties that you and your friends and your family and your community have to your land, and all of that stuff, right? So I think that's one way we can kind of swim against the current of, like I said, the death of the transcendence and the desacralization of the sacred. Number two, consumerism as identity. Okay. Now, because our culture is now focused more on appearance and materialism, consumerism becomes our new identity. All right. So previously, being part of a community meant, being part of a shared history, a culture, a tradition, and all that stuff I just discussed. But now we're somewhat atomized. Okay, so you're no longer part of kind of a cross generational series of ideas or traditions and things like that. Now you're just an individual. Okay, in the Dork Age, you're not part of society or anything like this, or part of a people with a shared history, or any of these, kind of scary things. You're just an individual, and if you want to be part of a subculture, you can be part of any subculture just by buying into it. Okay, so you want to be, part of some kind of underground music subculture, you just wear the uniform, wear the right uniform, wear the leather jacket with the nose piercings and funny hairdo. Just tick the right boxes, make sure you believe the right things, make sure you have the right ideas. You can voluntarily join a subculture now. Okay, so now this is something that funnily enough, the punks caught wind of very early on. So if you think that maybe punk rock kind of exploded in 1976 or 77, whenever it was, barely a year later, Crass, the UK punk rock band, they released a song called Punk is Dead in 1978. So barely a year after punk exploded onto the scene, right?
Yes, that's right. Punk is dead. It's a banana breath on a country's head.
And why? Because they knew that essentially punk had eventually devolved into just a trend. Okay, because people were just, buying all the records and wearing the safety pins in their ears and shit like that. And they were just, ticking all the right boxes, but actually missing the point. Okay. Um, and I think that consumerism now is a big part of, who we are, a big part of expressing ourselves. And that's kind of the dream that's been sold to us through consumerism now. It's like you can be whoever you want, and you can just, buy this stuff to be who you want to be, at the end of the day. So that's why you have phenomenon like conspicuous consumerism. People showing off their fancy shoes, their fancy sneakers, their luxury handbags, and their Bugattis on social media and all this other bullshit. Because now the stuff that you own and how expensive this stuff you own is essentially is kind of a like a proxy for your worth as an individual, right? Because it says something about you, what you own, the stuff that you wear, the stuff that you buy, says more about your identity than the language you speak, and the the your history and all of this other stuff. Okay, so that's why you have, poor people buying luxury bags and going into debt because they want to signal that they're, something that they're probably not, you know. Um, and that's why you have like a proliferation of, Instagram models and influencers taking photos of themselves on fake private jet sets. I mean, that's a thing, If you didn't know that, that's a thing. Like, you can go to a place and there's like a fake private jet interior, and you can sit there and your friends can take photos of you, and you can pretend that you have a private jet, or or like I said, you can rent a Bugatti and then take a picture of it and then say, "Oh, look, my Bugatti." Um, because consumerism now is identity. Everything's just fake and gay now. You know, everything's just fake and gay. So how do we, how do we combat that? How do we, what do we do with that, right? Personally, reject trends. That's what I think you should do. You should reject trends. Okay, so I did another video recently about trends, and why they suck. Reject trends and reject influencers. Don't follow trends. Find what you think works for you, and do that, right? Find what has worked for thousands of years, and do that, because those people thousands of years ago, they knew what worked. They figured it out earlier on than you will ever figure it out, and they knew what they were doing. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel, right? Um, Consumerism and social media as well. Like, stop comparing yourself to others on social media, all right? Because, like I said, most of that shit is 100% fake. Okay. So if you compare yourself to people on social media, you will never be happy, because there's always going to be somebody who, looks more successful than you. They own, a more expensive car than you. They own a more expensive watch than you. They have a bigger house than you, or whatever it is. I mean, and chances are, all of those things are fake anyway. So stop defining yourself by what you consume, right? You're not defined by what you consume. You're not defined by what you wear. You're not defined by what you own. You are defined only by what you do, all right? You're not even defined by what you believe. You're defined by what you do, okay? So that's how I think we can navigate um, consumerism as identity in the Dork Age. Number three, and this is why I call the Dork Age the Dork Age, because our current ruling class are all dorks. Okay. Whereas in the past, you may have had, like, a wise king, what Plato and Socrates would have called the philosopher king. Right now, we have managerial dorks. Okay. These are our ruling class. They are bureaucrats. They are just bank managers, who somehow got into positions of political power. Okay, and most of these dorks couldn't fucking manage a lemonade stand. All right. But the paradigm that follows these dorks are, obsessions with ideas like growth, infinite growth. We need to keep GDP going up as long as we can forever. All right. And they're obsessed with, these other abstract measures of economic growth, like I said, like GDP, right? Line go up. I'm sure you've heard that phrase before. So, and line go up is the religious mantra of the day, and it must go up at all costs, no matter what the damage is. Okay. And along with that, they're obsessed with control. They're obsessed with controlling every facet of our lives and encroaching upon every single aspect of our lives, and telling us how to live, right? So, but funnily, they'll tell you in the same breath that, you're free to do whatever you want, all right? But the truth is that we live in a kind of totalitarian liberalism. So, you're free to do whatever you want as long as you're restricted within these bounds. Okay, so and along with these managerial dorks, that also includes, so-called experts. Okay, so you have experts who tell you what to eat. Don't eat too many eggs. Don't eat too much red meat. It's all these things are bad for you. Um, Even though there's studies that show exactly the opposite. They tell you what to put in your bodies. They tell you what to think. Very importantly, talking heads on social media, talking heads on TV tell you what to believe, what to think. They tell you who your enemy is and why you need to support this cause and that cause, and why this person or that regime is the most evil regime, on the face of the earth, and we need to do everything we can, include sacrifice subsequent generations and our well-being and our wealth for um, for the interests of somebody else. all these dorks just make everything political. Okay, like literally almost everything is political now, including things like gender. I mean, I don't want to get into that, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I think one of the things that best represents the Dork Age and the ruling class of the Dork Age is the bottle cap that is eternally attached to the bottle. Some bureaucrat decided somewhere that this is a problem that needs to be solved. Okay. So yeah, the ruling class are dorks in the Dork Age. Uh, that's number three. What can we do about that? Well, to be honest with you, unfortunately, there's not really all that much we can do about it. Unless you want to get organized and get involved in politics, well, good luck because you're gonna need a lot of resources to do that. And the whole system is pretty much against you. So good luck with that. But what can we do? Well, not really much. But my advice would be to get involved with politics, at least on a local level. Get involved in your local council, your town council, whatever it is, your local neighborhood community thing. Get organized and fix your neighborhood. Really, that's it. Number four. So this kind of is a continuation of number three in a way. The Dork Age is also characterized by extreme egalitarianism. Extreme egalitarianism. So that's something that has its roots in one thing I just mentioned now, which is totalitarian liberalism, which sounds pretty hilarious. It sounds like a paradox in terms, but it's not if you really think about it. So this extreme egalitarianism kind of manifests itself in a almost therapeutic modern culture, right? So in another video, I described how being yourself is often perpetuated as the highest moral good, right? So that also comes with the idea of being validated, right? Being validated as an individual, having your feelings validated as the most important thing, right? So things like, oh, you're enough just the way you are. You're just normal, you're beautiful just the way you are. Healthy at any size, big is beautiful, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. All of this rhetoric kind of um, flattens aspiration, right? It flattens any sense of wanting to ascend, wanting to be better. Um, and if you criticize somebody for whatever reason, maybe they're too fat or whatever it is, oh, you're a bigot, right? Criticism is now bigotry. Um, and striving for excellence, striving to be better, is toxic. It's elitist. You know, um, as I said in my video about being yourself as the highest moral good, objective standards and things like that are pathologized. They're like they're just external standards. It's like a colonialist. Having external standards is just imposing some kind of colonial oppression on the individual. All right. And the problem with that is eventually, because everything has just been leveled down to the common denominator, to the very lowest form. The only thing that matters is now quantity over quality, right? So no one is kind of praised for actually offering anything of value. They're praised for how many likes they got, how many followers they have on social media, uh, you know, how much money they earned, how many people they scammed. I mean, I'm sure you've heard of like OnlyFans models getting famous because they banged, you know, whatever, 1,000 guys in one night or whatever. Um, and somehow these people somehow these people generate attention, right? And for some reason, these people are revered in a way, you know. Um, so, instead of depth, instead of somebody striving for craftsmanship or for mastery over something, over a craft that they want to pursue, um, depth, rarity, craftsmanship, and difficulty, overcoming difficulty, all of these things have kind of become obsolete and replaced with just, you know, like I said, quantity, the reign of quantity. Um, Essentially, we live in an age of just, infinite copies of nothing that actually has any significance or that matters at all. You know. So, how do we combat that within ourselves? How do we avoid the trappings of, falling into the obsession with quantity, right? You have to be honest with yourself, right? You have to be honest with yourself and hold yourself to a high standard, and hold the people around you to a high standard as well. Okay, strive to become better than yourself. Demand greatness, not just from yourself, but from the things that you spend your time doing, right? Um, don't just sit there scrolling through reels on Instagram. Do something productive with your time. Demand quality over quantity. All right. Both from yourself and from people around you as well, right? Quantity is easy, right? Anyone can just create the slop and just trash on Instagram, and there's plenty of people who do that. And it's easy for us to just follow these things and just scroll through mindless videos on Instagram and get a laugh out of it. There's nothing wrong with that now and again, of course, just to veg out a little bit, but um, this is the prevailing paradigm nowadays, right? Um, so yeah, be honest with yourself and hold yourself to a higher standard, and hold people around you to a higher standard. And that way we can somewhat overcome this extreme egalitarianism that pervades modern culture and the Dork Age. Last but not least, certainly not least, number 5, the illusion of progress masking decline. So, modern technology, I think, creates the illusion that we have it better off than previous generations, right? Everyone has a smartphone. You can open up Amazon and order whatever you want, and it'll be delivered to you overnight, maybe even on the same day in some cases. Okay. Literally everything is available to you at the touch of a button now. All right. I talked about conspicuous consumerism earlier. This is also convenient consumerism. All right. So, this kind of combination of convenient consumerism and this drive for conspicuous consumerism kind of creates like a perfect storm, if you think about it in a way, right? So, another thing that characterizes this whole idea of the illusion of progress is just speed. How fast everything now it is nowadays, right? So speed has kind of become its own virtue in a way. Fast food, fast fashion, ephemeral relationships like dating apps. You just swipe left, swipe right, and you'll find the perfect, person to spend the rest of your life with. Fast content, 15-second reels, 30-second reels, and TikToks. Um, just boom, 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 dopamine hits constantly, bombarding your brain, and all of this stuff is just fueled by technology. And don't get me wrong, technology is a wonderful thing in many cases, right? But there's also, obviously, there's also many downsides to it, right? Another thing is the delegation of, decision making that we have given to algorithms. Okay, let's say you have Spotify. Okay, Spotify. What is Spotify? Spotify is basically a curated library of music. It doesn't have every single piece of music ever written. In fact, there's a lot of things that it doesn't have there, and there's probably a reason for that. But Spotify is just, again, it's a model of the managerial dork controlling what you have access to, what information you have access to, what music and entertainment you're allowed to consume. And not only that, but you don't even decide anymore. You just have an algorithm that decides what you're going to listen to. You know, and it's the same thing with other things like Netflix as well. You think Netflix has every single movie available? No, You don't even own the movies or, the music that you consume anymore. They're not even yours. They're owned by Spotify, and Spotify and Netflix and all these other services can remove them at the drop of a hat. You will own nothing and be happy. Another thing, AI. We're also delegating our decision making to AI nowadays, right? And our thinking. I mean, I'm sure, like, anyone who's active on Twitter nowadays has seen someone post something, and then the first comment under it is, Grog, is this true? You know, I mean, people don't even want to think for themselves anymore. They just ask an AI to confirm the information or to analyze it for them. And, it's ridiculous. So, we have this illusion that technology is making our lives easier because it's given us access to more than ever before, more abundant information and more abundant entertainment and endless slop that we can consume. But in reality, if you go outside, our cities are crumbling, you know, IQs are plummeting across the world, right? Mental illness is at an all-time high and it's only getting worse, right? Education is getting worse at all levels, from kindergarten to fucking university level. All right. Um, is that really progress? Just because, now you have an iPhone and you can, access porn at any given moment? Is that really progress? I'm not so sure. So how do we navigate that? I mean, like I said, technology is great, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm sitting here in front of a computer and recording this video, and I'm going to upload it to YouTube, and you're watching it, and hopefully you're watching it. And, that's great. It's wonderful. But technology is great, but there's already way too much of it. All right. So, and all of these things are, designed to suck us in. They're designed to retain our attention. Okay. So you need to use technology wisely. Remember that, social media, you're not the customer of social media apps. All right. You are the target audience. The customer is, advertisers and big business. Be mindful of how you use technology, and learn to be less dependent on technology that no one needed barely 20 years ago. No one owned a smartphone 20 years ago. Okay, very few people owned a smartphone 20 years ago, and things were just fine, believe me. Don't hand over your soul, your spirit, your strength to the algorithm. All right. Break the illusion of progress masking decline, and focus on the things that you can improve in your life. All right. So, those are five things that I think characterize the Dork Age for the most part. There may be more things. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But the Dork Age isn't a modern culture that's broken or anything like that. Okay. It is broken, but it's actually purposely designed to be this way. It's designed to keep you docile. It's designed to keep you weak. And I say that in a world that wants you weak, it is an act of rebellion to be strong. Okay. And that is why we are at war against atrophy. All right. Because the Dork Age trades depth and the mastery for speed and, validation. Right. It trades risk for safety. Okay, it trades meaning for stimulation and entertainment. Okay, it wants you to be comfortable. It wants you to be distracted. It wants you to be dependent, and it wants you to be small and weak, because small and weak men don't fight back. So the choice for me is simple, and it should be for you too. All right. You can either, accept the programming of the Dark Age and become another last man, or you can declare inner war and revolt from within. Okay. There might not be things that we can do to change the world at large, all right, or to change the direction that things are moving in. But we can definitely work on ourselves. So choose discomfort, choose the war against atrophy, build something that lasts, because something, the Dork Age will not last. And when it comes crumbling down, you want to still be there, and you want to be stronger than the Dork Age and the dorks. who set this thing up. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, subscribe, share this with your fellow neo-barbarians. Support the war against atrophy by going to innerwarstrength.co and buying some cool merch. And I will catch you in the next one. Catch you later.